Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. We know that our visitors and attendees are taking their seats. My name is Brenda Tyndall. I am the Executive Director of the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture, where our mission is to foster curiosity and a spirit of discovery in visitors of all ages, enhancing public understanding of and appreciation for the natural world, science, and human cultures. This mission in mind, I am delighted to welcome our in-person audience. Give yourselves a round of applause. As well as our online audience to tonight's book presentation sponsored by the Harvard Museums of Science and of Natural History, We are absolutely delighted to have Dr. David Shiffman with us tonight to talk about his wonderful book, Why Sharks Matter, published this year by Johns Hopkins University Press. During the program, we will be raffling 3 copies of this wonderful book. We will announce the winners at the end of the talk, so stay tuned. It is now my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome George Lauder, Henry Bryant Bigelow Professor of Ichthyology, Curator of Ichthyology in the Museum of Comparative Zoology, and Harvard College Professor who will introduce tonight's speaker.
Thank you very much. I'm assuming that everyone here and our Zoom attendees are interested in sharks and the biology of sharks. And as you know, they've certainly had a tough time of it in the last 100 years or so, changing ocean conditions, biological and physical, overfishing. They've had a challenging time, and so they can use all the champions they can get. And we have a great champion of shark biology here today, Dr. David Shiffman, who has excelled at not only the scientific study of sharks, but at public communication on science and policy involved in understanding sharks. And so he'll be talking to you today about his book, a book I personally purchased, pre-purchased on Amazon, so I've had it for a little while. He signed it kindly for me today. And it's a very engaging, entertaining book. I can highly recommend it. So let me just tell you a little bit about Dr. Shiffman's credentials. He was an undergraduate at Duke University, majoring in marine biology. He has a master's from the College of Charleston. He has a PhD from University of Miami. And since then, he's had postdoctoral fellowships at Simon Fraser University, and now he's a research fellow with the University of Arizona. Not too many sharks in Arizona, but he's based in Washington, D.C. There's an ASU campus there where he teaches marine biology and is a very outspoken advocate. Highly recommend Twitter, Instagram, Facebook following of Dr. Shiffman. And he's been very instrumental, let me say, in trying to promote and increase and make awareness of the great diversity of people doing research in shark biology today. That certainly wasn't true 50 years ago, but things have changed dramatically, and in part due to Dr. Shiffman's efforts to establish just a very broad, integrating community studying shark biology. So it's a great pleasure to have you here today. I don't know if a few people are sneaking in,
Please,
but
come
you're
in.
welcome to come in. Let's welcome our speaker, Dr. David Shiffman.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight, and for those of you watching at home in the comfort of your living rooms. I'm very excited to be speaking with you here today. My name, as was mentioned, is Dr. David Shiffman, and I live and work in the Washington, D.C. area, where I am what's called an interdisciplinary marine conservation biologist. I want to just briefly break down what all of those words mean. A marine conservation biologist is a little different from a marine biologist. We use a lot of the same methods and work in a lot of the same systems, but the questions are different. It's not just, where does this fish go? But we know that this fish is threatened. Where does it go relative to where its threats are, with the goal of trying to understand how to more effectively protect them. And interdisciplinary means that I don't just study the fish, I study the human side of science and conservation. I study the laws, I study the economics, I study what do people know, what do people think, what do people want, what do people fear about all of these things. And the end result is every day is a little bit different. That's a big job portfolio, and some days I'm out on a boat tagging sharks in South Florida. I actually did a fundraiser contest through the book where readers of my book could donate to some great charities, and then I drew names out of a hat, and 20 of my readers got to join me for a day of shark research in South Florida, which was really a blast. Some days I'm speaking to the news media. Some days I'm speaking to policymakers in the Washington, D.C. area. And some days I'm dressing up like an idiot and speaking in schools. So every day is a little different, and I love my job. Again, you can follow me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Why Sharks Matter. If I don't get to your question here tonight, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, but if I don't get to it and you want to ask later, or if you want to learn more about how you can get involved, or if you might have another question in a few months, that's the best way to get a hold of me. And if any of you are so inclined, you are free to tweet along or post on social media during this talk. I just ask that you tag me so that I can find and share the post later at Why Sharks Matter. So I've loved sharks for a really, really long time. I am 3 years old in that photo. I'm 5 years old in that photo. I'm 15 in that photo. I think I look just about exactly the same in these. The beard is a new addition, and I think it works. But I've loved sharks for a really long time, as long as my family can remember. And tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about why I love them so much, and why they've held my attention for my whole life, and what I've learned in a career of studying them and a lifetime of being obsessed with them. And in doing so, I want to introduce to you some of the themes of my new book, Why Sharks Matter. We will be raffling off some copies later. There are other copies that will be for sale if you're interested. And at the end of the talk, after we do the question and answer session, I am happy to sign and personalize books if you have them with you or want to get them here. But we are going to do a question and answer session. I'm happy to answer anything that you want to know about sharks or marine biology or ocean conservation or me or the book or anything like that. I just ask that you please hold that till the end of the talk. I do an Ask Me Anything on social media every week, so there is no question too out there. I'm happy to answer literally anything you can think of. I can just about guarantee that I've had a weirder question on Reddit. So it's great to be speaking associated with a science museum here, because I grew up in Pittsburgh, in western Pennsylvania, far from the ocean. And science museums and zoos and aquariums are a big part of the reason why I fell in love with sharks and fell in love with the ocean. That's me, 7 years old. My brother's 4, at the Pittsburgh Zoo. I grew up in Pittsburgh. The first sharks I ever saw in my life were at the Shark Tank at the Pittsburgh Zoo. And at the very first stop on my book tour, you guys are stop 27 now, they set up this very same talk that you're seeing here in front of the Shark Tank at the Pittsburgh Zoo. So it was a real full circle moment for me, and it was great. A few stops ago, last week, those photos of me as a little kid on a shark, that's at Lake George, where I vacationed every summer of my life, and I gave a talk at the library in Lake George. So this has been awesome for me, and I'm so happy to be here with you tonight as well. The wet floor sign behind the Shark Tank at the Pittsburgh Zoo, they told me, don't worry about it. It's been leaking for 15 years. We don't know what's wrong. It's probably fine. So I want to talk to you about some of the reasons why I love sharks so much. And one of the big reasons is they're so fascinating. They're so different. They're so weird and amazing. And that starts on the inside. Sharks do not have bones. They have a skeleton, but it is not made of bone. I want to demonstrate this to you, so everyone could hold out their arm in front of their face, pick a point about halfway between your wrist and your elbow, and try to bend your arm. Don't try too hard. Hopefully you cannot bend your arm there. If anyone did, we're going to stop and call you an ambulance. But now crinkle your ears. Crinkle your nose. Feel how much more flexible that is? That's cartilage, that's bone. Sharks don't have bones. Their skeletons are made out of cartilage, which is lighter than bone and more flexible than bone. And there's some evidence that in some situations it heals faster. Sharks' entire bodies are made out of cartilage like that. And that's also true of the other cartilaginous fishes, they're called. And that's the skates, the rays, and the chimeras. Another reason why sharks are amazing is they have an entire sense that we don't have. I don't just mean they can see better than we can, though they can. I don't just mean they can smell better than we can, though they can. I mean that they have an entire way of perceiving the world that we don't have at all. That's amazing. They can sense electromagnetic fields. And let me tell you why that might be helpful if you're a shark. If you have a prey animal that is hiding under the sand where you can't see it or hear it or smell it, we'd be out of luck and might starve. But sharks can tell it's there because they can sense the electricity given off by its beating heart, hiding under the sand or mud. And I just think that's fascinating. So these experiments were done by Ad Kalmin. He did some of his work at Woods Hole, not far from here. And he just died a few months ago, and I got to write his obituary and a legacy of his scientific discovery for American Scientist magazine. It's in the May issue and freely available online if you want to learn more about this. But it was really powerful to get to do that. Such a giant in my field. They also use this electromagnetic sense for navigating in the open ocean. Sharks go from one particular beach on one particular island to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and then back again. How do they find their way? There's no road signs, there's no landmarks. They're navigating using the Earth's magnetic field, which is super cool. And again, we can't do this at all. There are some shark nerds in the audience here. Shout out some shark species. How many shark species can we name in a few seconds?
Basking shark.
Basking shark, good one.
Tiger shark.
Tiger shark. Mako, great white. Hammerhead. Cookie cutter.
Poor beagle.
Poor beagle. All right, let's stop here. That was 12 that I counted. That's pretty good. That's more than most of my audiences get. Not surprising, there's a bunch of smarty pantses here at Harvard. But there are 536 known species of sharks, with a new species of shark, skate, ray, or chimera, the other cartilaginous fishes, discovered somewhere in the world every 2 weeks. So I see some young folks in the audience here tonight. If you want to be a marine biologist when you grow up, I promise there will still be plenty for you to do. I want to highlight some of my favorite weird and wonderful species here, and in doing so, give you a sense of how amazingly biodiverse this group of animals is. They come in just about every shape and size and color that you can imagine. They're found in an enormous diversity of habitats. They're found under Arctic ice. They're found in the deep sea where it's so dark that light never reaches. The US Navy SEALs have a saying that if you want to see if there's a shark near you in the water, what you do is you stick your finger in the water and you taste it, and if it's salty, that means you're in the ocean and there's probably a shark near you. And that's true, but it's incomplete because some sharks live in lakes and rivers. So that is the American pocket shark. It is not called that because it's small enough to fit in your pocket, though it is. It's actually about life size blown up on this screen here. It's called that because of a weird pocket of flesh behind its eye that contains glow-in-the-dark liquid that it can squirt on command to startle predators. That is the megamouth shark. There's a few reasons why I love this. One is how it was discovered. A US naval vessel in 1974 hit one with their anchor off Hawaii. If they had deployed that anchor 30 seconds sooner or 30 seconds later, we wouldn't have known that this species existed for 15 years. They also, this is one that lives in the deep sea, and they have biofluorescent gums. That means that their gums glow in the dark. And that means that prey animals go to investigate it and swim right into their mouths. That is snack time goals. Another reason why I love these guys is their scientific name. Most scientific names translate to something like the little brown bird with the gray spot on its head or something like that. This is Megachasma pelagios, the giant mouth of the deep. By science standards, that's practically poetry. This is a basking shark. Someone shouted off one of those. You have these off New England. They're the second largest fish in the world. They feed much like a whale shark. They swim around with their mouth open and filter feed. This is an animal that I've been relating to more and more the last couple of years. You often think of sharks as being fast and powerful and muscular and sleek and athletic. This is the angular rough shark. It's the exact opposite of that, the couch potato of the ocean. So I've been relating to them a lot the last couple of years. You do have sharks here in New England. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone here. I took this photo at the New England Aquarium the other day. This great display. Though shockingly, they don't mention my favorite shark, sandbar sharks. Follow #BestShark to learn about them. But those are found off New England too. But there are lots of sharks found in the waters of New England. And in fact, some of the largest shark fisheries in the world are found off New England. The largest sustainable shark fishery in the world is right here off the coast of Massachusetts. And it is for spiny dogfish. Yes, those are sharks. Lots of fishermen say, oh, it's not a real shark, it's a dogfish. It's a shark. By any definition, they're just little. I have this letter in here. I find this just absolutely fascinating. This is a letter that Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote to the USDA, trying to get the USDA to buy surplus Massachusetts caught shark and serve it at public school lunches around the country. And this ended up not working. But I'm not saying it's bad, I'm not saying it's good, but it's interesting and something that you might not know about your senator here in Massachusetts. Where we are, and where I was last week specifically off Cape Cod, is one of, I think, the most fascinating places in the world for the study of human-wildlife conflict with the return of the great white sharks. And why it's fascinating is we have something in ecology and conservation called shifting baselines. Basically, that means how much better or worse something gets depends on when you start counting. So you hear these stories about the great whites coming back to Cape Cod, and in every news story there's this retiree who said, I've been coming to the Cape for 50 years and I've never heard of great white sharks here. And they're not wrong. But for the millions of years before that, there were great white sharks there. So it depends on when you start counting. I got some funny looks at the Hen of the Meadows beach at the tip of Cape Cod. Apparently most people, when they see a sign that says, warning, serious risk of dismemberment or death, they don't make that face. But I have seen this sign on so many scientific papers and public talks. Getting to see it in person was like meeting a celebrity. Driving around in Chatham, I don't think I've ever had the question of what should I have for lunch today so thoroughly and definitively answered as when I passed Pizza Shark. There are signs like this all over Chatham. There are so many shark toys and plushies and Christmas tree ornaments and bumper stickers everywhere. Cape Cod has embraced sharks. This is one of 8 shirts that I bought there last week. It's possible I have a problem with buying shark clothing. So sharks they also have absolutely amazing behaviors. Lots of animals can hyperextend their jaws in front of their face. Snakes famously do this. But nothing does it as far or as fast as a goblin shark. That video is slowed down 100 times so you can see what's happening. That video is not slowed down. That is the cruising speed of the adult Greenland shark, the slowest moving large animal in the ocean. But they are in no particular hurry because they can live to be over 400 years old. They're not considered reproductively mature adults until they're in their 160s, which is a really long time to be going through puberty. But somehow, they eat polar bears. The largest land predator on Earth, bigger than lions, bigger than tigers, bigger than the other bears, and Greenland sharks eat them. It's probably scavenging of one that drowns. But in my mind's eye, I can think of a polar bear swimming from ice floe to ice floe being pretty vulnerable to getting slurped up from below. People ask me a lot, what do hammerheads use that hammerhead for? Well, one of the things is extra surface area for that electrosense that I talked about earlier. You'll often see them cruising along the bottom, moving their head back and forth, much like someone using a metal detector at the beach, and for basically the same reason. But they also use it to pin down flat prey, which they can munch on while it can't get away. I once saw a hammerhead shark skull that had 70 stingray barbs through its face. So the barbs were not doing a whole lot to deter that hammerhead. That's a thresher shark. Their tails can be as long as the rest of their body combined, and until 2013, no one had any idea what they used that for, because it's kind of awkward to swim like that. And then a scuba diver filmed this. It uses it as a whip. It makes a shockwave underwater that stuns prey that they can then munch on when it can't get away. This is a kitefin shark, the largest of the shark species whose whole bodies can glow in the dark. These get to be about 3 feet long. But there is a whole family of sharks that glow in the dark called the lantern sharks. My favorite lantern shark is the ninja lantern shark. And it is called that because my friend and colleague who discovered it, Victoria Vasquez, discovered it right around a family get-together and was home with her family. And everyone was talking about what's new at school, what's new at work. And she said, I discovered this new shark and I can name it whatever I want. And her young cousin said, ninjas are cool, call it the ninja shark. So she did. You can't come to a shark talk these days and not see at least one baby shark joke. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. But where baby sharks come from is also an incredible example of biodiversity in action. Some sharks give live birth. You're seeing here a lemon shark being born. That is a miniature shark that needs to take care of itself immediately. Sharks have no parental care at all. Some sharks, and in this case a skate, a shark relative, lay eggs. If you've heard of a mermaid's purse watching up on the beach, those are skate eggs, typically, sometimes shark eggs, depending on where you are. This one has had the top removed so you can see what's happening in it. Some sharks have a weird mix of this that's only found in sharks, where an egg hatches inside the mother and then it's born as if live birth. Some sharks can clone themselves. If a female shark wants to have babies and there's not a suitable male around, she just becomes pregnant, and instead of the babies being a mix of the DNA of mom and dad, they're just clones of the mom. Some sharks have what's called multiple paternity, and that means a female will mate with multiple males, get pregnant by several of them at the same time, and give birth to a litter of half-siblings, the same mom but different dads. Some sharks can mate and then decide, you know what, now is not a great time for me to be pregnant, but I already went through all the trouble of mating, so the female can store the sperm inside her body and then later become pregnant. The record for that is 4 years. So just an incredibly diverse group of strategies here. So sharks are absolutely fascinating, and that's one reason why I love them. But when most people think of sharks, they think about sharks biting people, sharks being a threat to humans. Certainly you hear about this in New England a lot. This summer has been, there have been a few bites. But this is really unbelievably rare and unlikely. And one of the reasons why people are so terrified of sharks is the movie Jaws, which is actually out in theaters this weekend, remastered in 3D and IMAX. They were showing it at the movie theater across from Pizza Shark, and I almost canceled a dinner plans to go see it. But there's actually something in the public policy literature called the Jaws effect to explain how a fictional portrayal of a real-world issue affects how real people really think about that issue. Another example of this is Jurassic Park. If I ask you to picture a T-Rex, you picture the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, even though we know that's not what they look like or how they behave. That's perhaps a less consequential example, but either way, Spielberg has a lot to answer for here. So Jaws came out 47 years ago, by the way. I don't know if anyone saw it in theaters, then then I'm extra glad that you didn't pull too hard on your arm. So when I say sharks are not a serious threat to humans, what exactly do I mean? Because sure, injuries do happen, and every once in a while serious injuries or even deaths do happen. But it's very, 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 very unlikely. How unlikely? More people are bitten by other people on the New York City subway in a year than are bitten by sharks in the whole world. A lot more. And whenever I say this, you can always tell who's been on the New York City subway, because some people are going, yeah, that makes sense, and some people are going, how is that possible? Flower pots falling on your head from above when you walk down the street kill more people in a typical year than sharks do. I didn't understand that statistic until the start of lockdown, and I saw some of my neighbors trying to set up patio gardens and not installing them very well. And now I understand why we have a plague of falling flower pots. As a social media guy, I love this one. More people die in a typical year falling off cliffs while taking a selfie of the beautiful scenery behind them than are killed by sharks. This one's apparently not true anymore, but I'm leaving it in out of spite. Vending machines, until 2009, killed more people in a typical year than sharks. I got a very angry phone call recently that I was using this statistic. And didn't you know during the Obama administration, OSHA changed the rules on how to make vending machines? So this used to be true. It's out of date now. I'm leaving it in out of spite. For the record, I don't know anyone who's ever been hurt by a shark. I do know 2 people who have been hurt by vending machines. So sharks are absolutely amazing animals. And they are not only not bad, not a threat to you, but they're actively good. They help keep the food web in balance by eating prey and keeping prey populations in check. This is a model food web, actually one from not far from here. Don't worry if you can't read everything on here, but see that there's a bunch of boxes with words in them. That's a fish, or a clam, or a porpoise, or a bird, or a seal found in the Northwest Atlantic, found not far from Massachusetts. And the lines are ecological interactions between them. This eats this competes with this for space, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of lines on here. Food webs are complicated. And if I were to pluck one line out of this web, it would probably be okay. If I were to pluck 2 or 3 or 4, it'd probably be okay. If you more than that, I start to get nervous because these things are very, very fragile, and they often have unpredictable effects. We very much want the ocean to be healthy because billions of humans depend on the ocean as a source of food, including many of the poorest humans on Earth, and tens of millions of humans depend on the ocean for jobs. So it's really important that we keep the ocean healthy, and part of that is keeping the food web healthy, and part of that is keeping the top of the food web healthy. So there's something called top-down control in ecology that basically means removing a predator has disproportionate impacts. There's also something called fear ecology, which is a really, really cool concept. And it basically says even if a predator is not eating prey, the mere presence or possible presence of the predator can influence the prey on a large scale, which can have huge ecosystem-wide interactions. So let me orient you to what you're seeing here. Each of these rocks is a coral head, a coral bommy in Australia. The darker green is seagrass beds, and the lighter is sand where fish felt comfortable venturing out of the coral head to graze on the seagrass. So you get these little circles, and then beyond that, the fish are too afraid of predators to go out farther. And this is another example of scientific poetry. The title of this paper that documented this is called A Halo of Fear Visible from Space. Love that title. I surveyed all the environmental nonprofit groups in the English-speaking world who work on shark conservation issues, and I asked them, when you're trying to convince people to protect sharks, why do you say we should protect sharks? Number one reason by far, sharks are ecologically important and population declines are bad for an ecosystem. More than all the other reasons combined, a lot more. So the bad news is many species of sharks, as George mentioned in his introduction, face very, very serious conservation challenges. The problem is so bad and getting worse so fast that this pretty infographic from 2015 is already out of date. It's already worse than this. This infographic says that about a quarter of all known species of sharks and their relatives are considered threatened with extinction by the IUCN Red List. It's now closer to about a third in less than 10 years. The number one threat by far, overfishing. Humans, us, we are killing too many sharks. This includes killing sharks both accidentally as bycatch and on purpose for targeted fisheries for both fins, which a lot of people have heard of, and meat, which a lot of people have not heard of, even though it's a larger and more rapidly growing threat. More specifically, shark fin soup is a traditional delicacy in Chinese and Southeast Asian cultures. But the imports and exports of shark fins have declined dramatically over the last 20 years. And over the same time period, these are quotes from a United Nations report called The State of Global Markets for Shark Products. And they found the quantity of shark meat being traded has risen substantially over the same time period. So you may think, less shark fin soup, yay, great for sharks. Nope, more sharks are being killed now. It's just a different part of them is being used. And an issue that I run into in ocean conservation a lot is I encounter some activists, especially on Twitter, who say that a bowl of shark fin soup, they find that repulsive, repugnant, vile, evil. And that, a grilled mako shark steak, that's fine, because that's how normal people eat fish. And in addition to being not helpful from a conservation perspective, either way you've got a dead shark, it's also super racist and not helpful. So we have a lot of issues with that in the ocean conservation world. If your shark conservation advocacy demonizes China and Japan and doesn't mention Spain or Portugal, then you're not interested in saving sharks, you're interested in yelling at Asian people. You can be forgiven for having no idea that the shark meat trade is a threat. This is an analysis of all of the media coverage of shark conservation in the English-speaking world over the last decade, 1,808 articles that I had a team of undergraduates read, code, and score for me. And we found that shark finning in the shark fin trade is mentioned 6 times as often as the shark meat trade, despite the shark meat trade being a bigger threat that's growing, while the shark fin trade is a smaller threat that's declining. That's not good. An important thing that I've learned in my career is that this is bad news, but it's not a lost cause. We can help sharks. We should help sharks. Scientists often know what needs to be done and what works and what doesn't work and when it works and what you need to make it work and when we need your help to make it work. We also know what people try to do that's not especially helpful. Those of you who follow me on social media see me rant about that a lot. I want to give you some examples here, but before I get into that, I want to note that this right here is a big part of the reason why I wanted to write this book. Because there has never before even been attempted an accessible to the public guide to all of the different laws and policies that are out there. Most shark books will say it will just be fun shark facts, and then at the end they say sharks are in trouble and they need your help, call your congressman or something. This book goes into almost 80 pages of detail on all the different laws and policies and regulations, how we know what works where, when you can help, how you can learn more, all of that good stuff. And it's written in such a way that you can follow it if you don't have a PhD and don't have a law degree. And that was the big goal in writing the book, and I'm thrilled with how the reception has been. But more on that later. When we're talking about what laws are available, what policies are available to protect sharks, there's a lot of them, even though you only ever hear about calls to ban the trade in shark fins. And I've grouped them into 2 policies here, which we call target-based and limit-based policies. This gets technical very quickly, so I will breeze through it at a bird's eye view level. The problem is overfishing. We're killing too many sharks. The one solution is to say, well, the fishing is at an unsustainable level now. Let's make it at a sustainable level. Reduce it, but still allow some. And these tools are things like size limits. If it's too small, you have to throw it back. quotas, you can only catch this many, et cetera, et cetera. Very traditional, familiar fisheries management tools. In recent years, there have been instead calls to ban all fishing for and trade in shark products. These are tools like shark sanctuaries and the shark fin trade bans that I've alluded to. This is not a new idea. This is Gifford Pinchot and John Muir, the founder of the U.S. Forest Service and the U.S. National Park Service. So this is the debate between conservation versus preservation and all of that that any of you who've taken an intro environmental studies class have probably come across. Few Westerners would disagree that anchovies are a natural resource to be exploited sustainably. Few Westerners would disagree that the great whales are a part of wilderness to be preserved. But sharks sort of fall awkwardly in the middle here. And from someone who studies the human side of conservation, this makes them a really fascinating study system, though the arguments can occasionally get quite heated. Though it's worth noting that 90% of the shark scientists in the world say that there is a clear answer to this. Sustainable fisheries, not bans, should be the goal. That does not mean we're right, but it is, you will very, very rarely find 90% of the people in a field agreeing with anything. So if you find that you're someone who cares about the ocean and learns about the ocean and you've never heard that before, I would ask you to consider where you're getting your sources of information from. And finally, the last theme of the book is that it's great that so many people are trying to help. It's great that so many people want to help. But wanting to help and trying to help are not the same thing as actually helping. We actually have a cliche for this. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. We've all heard this. It's great that people want to help sharks, but it matters what we do to help sharks because lots of things do not actually help or may even make the problem worse. There are lots of people who are well-intentioned but not especially well-educated or informed, and they want to help and they don't know how, and they Google it for 5 seconds and they do the first thing that they come across, which is not from a reliable source. Part of that problem is there are not enough people like me getting involved in answering the public's questions. So there's a lot of people who know what's going on who aren't talking to you, the people. There are also unscrupulous people who exploit this dynamic. There are people who are aware that there's a large audience who wants to help and doesn't have a clue how, and I can take advantage of that and make a quick buck and not help sharks. This is bad news, and I call it out often. I want to give you some examples of what I mean by wanting to help is not the same thing as helping. There is a group of scuba divers who ride sharks, who hug sharks, who kiss sharks on the face with their face, the bitey end of the shark they put on their mouth. And they think that they're helping, and they say they're helping. I don't know what the heck is happening in this photo, but it is not conservation, it is not science, and it is not education. Don't do this and don't support people who do this. This is a particular bugaboo of mine that I've been ranting about for 15 years. This is an online petition from change.org. You may have seen change.org, especially if you're on Facebook. It's integrated with Facebook. They bill it as anyone can make a petition, anyone can change the world. But what that means is a lot of people who don't have a clue what they're talking about make petitions all the time. And this Stop Shark Finning in Florida petition from April of this year got 60,000 signatures. And not one of those people, nor the person who made this petition, was apparently aware that we banned shark finning in Florida in 1993. This is a petition that cannot possibly do anything to help because its stated goal was accomplished before the person who made the petition was born. All this does is confuse people and waste people's time and give change.org 60,000 email addresses, which is why they make these. So, back to the book. There are lots of shark books out there. I have 3 shelves of them at home. I counted 6 or 7 for sale in the bookstore upstairs at this great museum. Why did I want to write another one? Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's never been a book like this one before. There's a lot of books that are fun facts about sharks. There's a whole shark scientist memoirs book, and I'm not old enough to write my memoirs just yet, but we'll see. But there's never been a book before that has tried to target it for the general public, not a textbook, not a graduate school book, not a law school book, targeted to the general public, explains all the science of why we know sharks are important, and all the reasons why we know they're in trouble, and all the things that can be done to help, and how we know, and what you can do to help, and introduces you to scientists and conservation organizations from around the world, and how you can follow them on social media or donate to support their work. No one's even tried to do a book like this before. And I've been absolutely thrilled with the reception that it's gotten. I was a starred review in the New York Times. That was absolutely amazing. I got to be a featured interview on National Public Radio's Science Friday. That was a career bucket list for me, something I hadn't broken into with all of my past success with public science engagement. And it was absolutely awesome to get to do that. I passed Jane Goodall on the Amazon Science bestseller list. My childhood self would not have believed that. My current self almost vomited when I saw that. So I've been absolutely thrilled with the reception because if I'm being honest, I wrote this book for me. It's a book that I'd always wanted to be out there. It's information that I wished had been more accessible so I didn't have to answer the same questions on Reddit all the time. And the fact that other people like it too has been extremely gratifying, and I honestly didn't even consider whether that would be the case when I wrote it for me. So welcome to my book tour. I think this is stop number 27 of what's currently a 41-city in 2022 book tour, though I've already have another 10 or 15 booked for next year, and happy to keep this going forever, though not at this pace. I haven't been home in 3 weeks, oh my God. But if any of you, and including those of you watching at home, represent a group that is interested in having speakers, I'm happy to chat with you further. I can also Zoom to anywhere. I'm happy to talk to your school or library or things like that. Never a charge for public schools or libraries. So I'm absolutely loving this and happy to want to keep it going as much as I can. And before I get to the question and answer session here, and before we raffle off some of the books, I want to do some thanks. I want to first and foremost thank my family for always supporting my crazy career goals. My parents are not scientists. They don't know what it means when I say I want to be a marine biologist, but they sure have been supportive my whole life, and I couldn't have done this without them. I want to thank my publisher, Johns Hopkins University Press, for giving me a lot of free rein to play around with a different type of shark book. One thing I will be proud of to my dying day is a venerable 100-plus-year-old academic press had to have an all-editorial meeting because of my book to determine whether house style was to capitalize both words in Florida man. So it's definitely a different type of book. I want to thank the museum here, especially George, Diana, and Bethany for helping to arrange this and bringing me out here today. It's been a blast. I want to thank my friends and colleagues, some of whom are in the audience today, for years of fact-checking and proofreading and listening to me rant about my vision for a different kind of shark book. And I also want to extend a deep and sincere thanks to you. I'm having the time of my life traveling around the world talking about sharks, and I could not do it if there weren't people who wanted to listen. So before I get to your questions, and I'm happy to answer anything that you want to know about sharks or marine biology or ocean conservation or my career path or the book, I just want to tell a quick funny story about this photo. I was a sponsor of the Sigma Xi conference, basically a national science fair. And I had an Ask Me Anything You Want About Sharks booth. And it was open to the public. For 3 days, I sat in this chair, and people came to ask me questions about sharks. These brilliant high school kids competing in the National Science Fair, people from the public that just came to ask questions about sharks. At one point, I got up to go to the bathroom, and I came back, and there was a 10-year-old boy sitting in that seat answering people's questions about sharks. And I sat and watched him for about 15 minutes. He got most of the questions right. It was darn impressive. Thank you so much for listening. I think we're going to do a raffle now. The books are for sale out yonder, and I'm happy to sign and personalize them for you. Thank you so much for listening.